For more than 2 hours, the ship was already dying. The men in the boiler rooms knew it. They stayed anyway. 2.5 miles down, in total darkness, the wreck of the Titanic has been keeping a secret about those men. In 2022, we finally went down to read it. The Titanic lies on the floor of the North Atlantic. The depth is about 3,800 meters. That is roughly 12,500 feet of black, freezing water. No sunlight has ever reached it. The pressure there would crush a submarine like a tin can. For decades, we could only visit it in fragments. A camera here. A spotlight there. A few minutes of grainy footage. We never saw the whole ship at once. Until now. A deep-sea mapping company called Magellan sent 2 robots down to the wreck. The mission took about 3 weeks. The robots captured around 715,000 photographs. They recorded millions of laser measurements. The data came to about 16 terabytes. From all of that, a team built something that had never existed before. A full-scale digital twin of the Titanic. A perfect copy, accurate down to the rivet. For the first time, historians could walk the entire wreck. In daylight. From every angle. Without ever getting wet. The Titanic analyst Park Stevenson put it simply. He called the ship the last surviving eyewitness to the disaster. And the digital twin let that witness finally speak. The wreck rests in 2 main pieces. The bow sits upright, dug into the seabed. The stern lies about 600 meters away. The stern is a ruin. It did not break cleanly. It was torn apart as it fell. The team studied the twin for nearly 2 years before they spoke. And when they did, the first thing they pointed to was not a hole. It was a valve. On the deck near the stern, the scan shows a single steam valve. It is locked in the open position. That one detail changes how we understand the final hours. An open valve means steam was still flowing. Steam meant the engines that made electricity were still turning. And electricity is everything on a sinking ship at night. It kept the lights on. It powered the pumps. And it kept the wireless room alive, so the distress calls could keep going out. The valve matches the historical accounts almost exactly. Those accounts say the engineering crew stayed at their stations in Boiler Room 2. They stayed for more than 2 hours after the ship struck the ice. The team down there was led by Chief Engineer Joseph Bell. They were engineers and stokers. Their job was to keep the power flowing while the sea came in above them. Every minute of light was a minute the crew could load another lifeboat. Every minute of power was another distress signal reaching out into the dark. The men in the machinery spaces bought that time with their lives. Not one of the ship's engineers survived. They stayed at their posts to the end. The valve on the scan is the physical trace of that choice. The scan revealed something else in the machinery. Some of the boilers are pushed inward. Concave. The most likely reading is that they were still hot when they hit the water. Cold seawater met scorching metal, and the metal buckled. If that reading is right, it is one more sign the fires were still burning as the ship went under. We should be careful here. The shape of the boilers is real. It is on the scan. The cause is our best interpretation of that shape. It is not proof. It is a strong, physical clue. Now, the damage that started all of this. Here we have to be honest about what we can and cannot see. The place where the iceberg tore the hull is buried in the seabed. The bow is dug in deep. The wound is under the mud. So the scan cannot show us the actual gashes. Instead, a separate team ran a simulation. Engineers at University College London rebuilt the collision inside a supercomputer. They used the ship's original blueprints and the evidence from the wreck. Our best physics now predicts something surprising. The iceberg did not rip one long, gaping hole. The model suggests it was a glancing blow. A series of small punctures, strung out along a narrow strip of the hull. Most of the individual openings were smaller than a sheet of paper. Smaller than a page of A4. That sounds almost survivable. It was not. The punctures reached across 6 of the ship's watertight compartments. The Titanic was built to float with 4 compartments flooded. 4, she could survive. 6 was a death sentence. The naval architect Simon Benson described the margin as heartbreakingly thin. The difference between sinking and staying afloat came down to holes the size of a piece of paper, spread over a long stretch of the ship. The water came in slowly. But it never stopped. The model even estimates how long the contact lasted. Around 6 seconds. 6 seconds of scraping ice against steel, and the fate of 2,200 people was set. Remember, that number is a model's best estimate. Not a stopwatch reading from that night. The digital twin also settled an old, unfair accusation. It concerns First Officer William Murdoch. For years, a version of the story said Murdoch panicked at the end. The 1997 film suggested he took his own life. The surviving officer Charles Lightoller always disputed that. Lightoller said Murdoch was swept out to sea while trying to launch a lifeboat. The scan supports Lightoller. On the twin, one of the lifeboat davits is in a position that matches a launch in progress. It matches a man working his station until the sea took him. This is not a signed confession from history. It is the physical evidence lining up with the witness who was there. After more than a century, the scan lets us say Murdoch most likely died doing his duty. Some findings are quieter. And harder. The scan caught a single porthole, its glass shattered. Survivors described ice bursting into their cabins on impact. A broken window on the bow fits those accounts. Across the seabed, the robots mapped the debris field. Pocket watches. Coins. Combs. A pair of shoes resting together in the sediment. These are not artifacts. They are the last belongings of people who did not make it home. The map treats them with the care they deserve. Put it all together, minute by minute, and the night takes shape. The Titanic left Southampton on the 10th of April, 1912. On the night of the 14th, at about 11:40, the lookout saw the iceberg. The glancing blow followed. Around 6 seconds of contact, by the model. The water began threading in through the paper-sized wounds. Below decks, the engineers went to work and stayed at it. For more than 2 hours, they held the lights and the power. The lifeboats went down, one by one, in that fragile electric glow. At about 2:20 in the morning on the 15th, the ship broke apart and sank. The bow and the stern began their long fall to the seabed. By dawn, the Carpathia was pulling survivors from the freezing water. The numbers from that night are hard to state with perfect precision. The passenger lists had errors. Names were duplicated or missed. So historians give a range. More than 2,200 people were aboard. More than 1,500 of them died. Around 700 survived. The crew suffered the worst of it. More than 3/4 of them never came home. The digital twin did not turn the Titanic into a horror story. It did the opposite. It gave us evidence of duty. An open valve, standing for men who chose to stay in the dark and keep the lights on for strangers. A davit, standing for an officer wrongly accused for 100 years. A line of tiny holes, standing for how thin the margin between disaster and safety can be. The wreck is still down there. And it is still fading. Recent expeditions have found pieces of the railing collapsing and the metal slowly returning to the sea. One day, the ship itself will be gone. But now we have the twin. 715,000 photographs, holding the last eyewitness in place. So that when the Titanic finally disappears from the seabed, the story of what her crew did in the final minutes will not disappear with her.